Sophie Adams stared at the contract lying on her father's mahogany desk, her name already forged at the bottom in ink she'd never touched. The navy blue dress she'd chosen that morning now felt like a funeral shroud. "You're 25, Sophie. Old enough to understand," her father said, unable to meet her eyes. "The gambling debts, they're calling them in. This arrangement saves us all." Her mother twisted her wedding ring nervously. "Dominic Hartwell is a powerful man. He could have chosen anyone, but he specifically asked for you." Sophie's stomach lurched. She knew why. 3 years ago, her family's construction company had been responsible for the building collapse that killed Dominic's fiancée, Alina. The lawsuit had been settled quietly, but the debt remained. Not financial debt, emotional debt. "This isn't marriage," Sophie whispered. "This is payment." Her father finally looked up, his face haggard. "You have no choice. The papers are signed. His car arrives at 8 tomorrow morning." Sophie stood slowly, her legs unsteady. "Then I suppose this is goodbye." That night, she packed only what mattered. Her mother's silver locket, a worn copy of Jane Eyre, and the small canvas where she'd painted the sunrise from her bedroom window. Everything else belonged to a life that was ending. At dawn, a black sedan with tinted windows waited outside. Sophie took one last look at her childhood home, memorizing the chipped paint on the shutters and the rose bush her grandmother had planted. Then she stepped into the car, leaving Sophie Adams behind forever. The Hartwell estate perched on a cliff like a glass and steel predator, all sharp angles and cold surfaces. Sophie's breath fogged in the mountain air as she stepped from the car, her heels clicking against black stone. Margaret, the housekeeper, greeted her with professional indifference. "East Wing, 3rd floor. Dinner's at 7. Mr. Hartwell expects punctuality." The mansion felt like a museum where emotions had been carefully removed and stored elsewhere. Every surface gleamed. Every corner was geometrically perfect. Sophie's footsteps echoed through empty hallways lined with abstract art that looked like frozen screams. Her room was beautiful and soulless, a 4-poster bed with white linens, a marble fireplace that had never known warmth, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking an infinity of pine trees. Someone had filled the walk-in closet with designer clothes in her exact size, all in muted colors that matched the house's cold palette. Sophie sat on the bed's edge, fighting the urge to cry. Crying would mean accepting this reality, and she wasn't ready for that surrender. At precisely 7, she found the dining room. A table for 12, but only 2 places set. Dominic Hartwell entered as the grandfather clock chimed the hour. He was taller than she'd imagined, his dark hair threaded with silver at the temples, his eyes like winter storms. Handsome in a way that felt dangerous, as if beauty were another weapon in his arsenal. He studied her with the clinical interest of someone examining a rare specimen. "Miss Adams." His voice was smooth bourbon over broken glass. "Sophie," she corrected, lifting her chin. "If I'm to live here, you might as well use my name." Something flickered in his expression. "Surprise, perhaps. I expected more compliance." "Then you don't know me very well." He sat across from her, and the silence stretched between them like a blade. 3 courses were served by invisible staff. Sophie ate mechanically, aware of his scrutiny. "The West Wing is off limits," he said finally. "Everything else is yours to explore." "And what's in the West Wing?" His jaw tightened. "Ghosts." Dinner ended. He stood abruptly. "I'll be in Seattle for the rest of the week. Margaret will see to your needs." Then he was gone, leaving Sophie alone with the echo of his footsteps and the weight of her new prison. During Dominic's absence, Sophie began her quiet rebellion. She opened curtains that had remained drawn for years, letting sunlight stream across marble floors. She rearranged the sterile flower arrangements, moving the orchids from their assigned positions. Small acts of defiance that breathed life into the mausoleum. On the 3rd day, she discovered the music room. A grand piano sat in the center like a sleeping giant, its surface reflecting the crystal chandelier above. When Sophie lifted the lid, the keys were pristine white and black teeth, hungry for sound. She'd taken lessons as a child before her family's troubles began, and now, tentatively, she played a simple melody her mother had taught her. The notes rang out, pure and clear, shattering the oppressive quiet that had ruled this place for too long. That was Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat. Sophie's hands froze above the keys. Dominic stood in the doorway, still in his travel clothes, his tie loosened. She hadn't heard him return. "You're back early." The meeting's finished. He stepped into the room, his expression unreadable. "No one's touched that piano in 3 years. Should I stop?" "No." The word came out harsh, almost desperate. He cleared his throat. "Alina used to play. Every morning. She'd wake me with Debussy or Beethoven." Sophie's chest tightened. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "How could you?" He moved closer, his eyes distant. "She was gifted. Concert pianist before she chose architecture, said she wanted to build spaces where music could live." "The building that collapsed," Sophie said quietly. "It was supposed to be a concert hall." His jaw clenched. Opening night was going to be our wedding day. The silence between them felt fragile, made of glass. "My father," Sophie began, her voice shaking. "He cut corners on the steel framework. I found the invoices after the accident. He paid for grade A materials but used grade C, pocketed the difference for his gambling." Dominic's eyes snapped to hers. "You knew?" "Not until after. I went to the police, but the case was already settled. My testimony would have meant nothing except destroying what was left of my family." She stood from the piano bench. "So yes, I knew, and I've carried that guilt every single day." He stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve the truth." Sophie's hands trembled. "And because this arrangement, this marriage, it's built on lies and debt. But I won't lie to you. Not about that." Dominic stepped closer, close enough that she could see the storm in his eyes. The war between hatred and something else she couldn't name. "Your honesty doesn't absolve you." "I know. And it doesn't change what you owe me." "I know that too." His hand rose, and for a moment she thought he might touch her face. Instead, he gripped the back of the piano bench so hard his knuckles went white. "Play something else," he said, his voice rough. "What? Play something happy. Something that doesn't remind me of funerals and empty promises." Sophie sat back down, her heart hammering. She thought of her grandmother's garden, of spring mornings before everything fell apart. Her fingers found the keys, playing a bright, lilting melody she'd composed as a teenager. Dominic listened, his expression softening degree by degree. When the last note faded, he spoke so quietly she almost missed it. "She would have liked you." Before Sophie could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving her alone with the piano and the weight of his words. That night Sophie couldn't sleep. She wandered the halls in her silk robe, drawn by instinct or fate toward the forbidden west wing. The door was unlocked. Inside, the rooms were frozen in time. A woman's studio, half-finished architectural drawings pinned to corkboards, blueprints for the concert hall scattered across a drafting table. And on the walls, photographs. Alina had been beautiful. Dark hair, bright eyes, a smile that seemed to light the world. In every photo with Dominic, they looked happy. Genuinely, devastatingly happy. Sophie touched one of the drawings, her throat tight. "I told you the West Wing was off limits." She spun around. Dominic filled the doorway, his expression thunderous. "I'm sorry, You just what? Decided my grief was yours to explore?" He strode toward her, fury radiating from every line of his body. "This is sacred. This is all I have left of her." "I understand that," Sophie said, standing her ground even as her heart raced. "But you can't live in a tomb forever." "Don't." His voice cracked like a whip. "Don't you dare tell me how to grieve." "I'm not." "But Dominic, she's gone, and punishing yourself, punishing me, keeping these rooms like a shrine. It won't bring her back." His hand shot out, gripping her wrist, not painfully, but firm enough to make her gasp. "You don't get to say her name. You don't get to have opinions about my life." Sophie met his eyes, seeing past the rage to the raw, bleeding wound beneath. "Then what am I here for? To be your ghost bride? To haunt these halls while you worship a memory?" Something in him broke. She saw it happen, saw the exact moment the armor cracked. He released her wrist and turned away, his shoulders shaking. "Get out! Dominic, I said get out!" Sophie fled, her heart in pieces, knowing she'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But as she reached her room, she heard it. The sound of the piano, and Dominic was playing. Morning came with rain hammering the windows. Sophie found Dominic in the kitchen, making coffee with mechanical precision. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. "I'm sorry," she said. "About last night." He didn't look up. "Coffee?" "Yes, please." He poured her a cup, their fingers brushing as he handed it over. Neither of them pulled away immediately. "I haven't played in 3 years," he said finally. "Couldn't bear to touch the keys after she died. But last night, after you left, I just started playing. And for the first time, it didn't feel like drowning." Sophie's chest ached. Music has a way of healing things we don't know are broken, or breaking things we thought were healed. He met her eyes. "I brought you here to punish you, to make you suffer the way I've suffered. I know. But you're not what I expected." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "And that terrifies me." Before Sophie could respond, Margaret burst into the kitchen, her usual composure shattered. "Mr. Hartwell, you need to see this. Now." They followed her to Dominic's study, where his laptop displayed an email. Sophie read over his shoulder, her blood turning to ice. The email was from a journalist. Subject line: "The truth about the Hartwell concert hall collapse." "Someone's been digging," Margaret said grimly. "They have documents, photos. They know about the substandard materials, and they know about your arrangement with the Adams family." Dominic's face went pale. "How?" "There's more." Margaret clicked to an attachment. Security camera footage. From the construction site, dated 2 weeks before the collapse. It showed Sophie's father meeting with the steel supplier, clearly arguing, then accepting an envelope thick with cash. But there was another person in the video. Dominic's business partner, Marcus Chen. "No." Dominic breathed. "That's not possible." Sophie's mind raced. Marcus was at the site? He was my college roommate, my best friend. He helped me through everything after Alina died. Dominic rewound the footage, his hands shaking. "Why would he be meeting with your father?" "Mr. Hartwell," Margaret said carefully. "There's something else you should know. Marcus has been trying to buy out your shares in Hartwell Industries. He approached the board last month." Sophie's blood ran cold as the pieces fell into place. It wasn't an accident. The collapse, it was deliberate. Dominic stared at her. "What are you saying?" "Think about it. Marcus knew Alina would be at the opening. He knew you'd be destroyed by her death. And he knew that with you broken and grieving, he could take everything." She grabbed his arm. "My father didn't just cut corners for gambling money. He was paid to ensure that building would fail. That's insane." "Is it? How did Marcus react when you announced our arrangement? Was he supportive?" Dominic's expression darkened. "He said I was making a mistake, that I should let the past go and focus on the company. Because he needs you focused on business, not investigating what really happened." Sophie pulled out her phone. "The journalist who sent this, they're not trying to expose you. They're trying to warn you." Dominic read the email again, his jaw clenched. "The article publishes in 48 hours unless I respond. They want to meet." "It's a trap," Margaret warned. "Marcus will know the moment you contact them." "Then we don't contact them directly." Sophie's mind whirled with possibilities. "We go to the construction site, tonight. If Marcus orchestrated this, there'll be evidence he couldn't erase." Dominic looked at her like she'd lost her mind. The site was demolished 2 years ago. The building was demolished, but the foundation's still there. And foundations tell stories. She met his eyes. "I worked summers for my father's company. I know where they hide things when they don't want inspectors to find them." For a long moment, Dominic said nothing. Then he grabbed his car keys. "Margaret, if anyone asks, we went to Portland for the weekend." "Sir, that's an order." The drive took 3 hours through sheets of rain. Dominic's hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles went bloodless. "If you're right, he said quietly. If Marcus really did this, killed Alina to take my company, then I've been mourning with her murderer for 3 years. We don't know anything for certain yet, but you suspect. Yes, Sophie admitted. I suspect. The construction site was a wasteland of concrete and rust. Crime scene tape still fluttered from the chain-link fence, faded by time and weather. They climbed through a gap in the fence, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Rain soaked through Sophie's jacket as they picked their way across the rubble. There, she pointed to a concrete pillar, partially buried. The support columns were supposed to be reinforced with rebar every 6 inches. Let me check the spacing. She knelt in the mud, running her hands over the rough concrete. Dominic crouched beside her, holding the flashlight steady. Here, Sophie said, her voice tight. The rebar spacing is 12 inches, maybe more. This concrete would have never supported the weight of the upper floors. Could that be standard for the time? Not for a building that size. This was deliberate structural sabotage. She stood, wiping mud from her hands. Dominic, whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't just cutting corners. This was engineering a collapse. A sound echoed across the site. Footsteps on gravel. They weren't alone. Well, well. Marcus Chen stepped from the shadows, flanked by 2 men in dark suits. I had a feeling you'd come here eventually, though I admit I didn't expect you to bring your little bride. Dominic moved in front of Sophie. Marcus, want to explain what you're doing here? The same thing you are, making sure the past stays buried. Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You were supposed to stay broken, Dom. Supposed to stay trapped in your grief while I built our company into an empire. But then you had to go and marry the girl. You killed Alina. I removed an obstacle. Marcus shrugged. She was making you soft, talking about slowing down, starting a family. We had investors ready to take Hartwell Industries global, and you wanted to play house. Sophie felt Dominic's entire body go rigid with rage. So you paid my father to sabotage the building, she said, her voice shaking. You murdered dozens of people just to get rid of one woman. Collateral damage. Marcus pulled out his phone. And now you're both going to disappear. A tragic accident. Newlyweds exploring a dangerous construction site in the rain. So careless. The men in suits moved forward. Dominic's hand found Sophie's. Run! They ran. Behind them, shouts echoed through the ruins. Sophie's lungs burned as they scrambled over concrete and twisted metal. Dominic pulled her through a gap in the rubble, and they tumbled down an embankment into darkness. They landed hard in what remained of the building's basement level. Water dripped from broken pipes. The smell of rust and decay choked the air. Are you hurt? Dominic gasped. No. You? I'm fine. He pulled her close, his heart hammering against her cheek. Sophie, I'm sorry. I brought you into this. I should have protected you. We protect each other. She looked up at him in the darkness. That's what this is now. Above them, flashlight beams swept the ruins. They'll find us, Sophie whispered. Dominic's arms tightened around her. Not if I can help it. And then, in the darkness and danger, he kissed her. It was desperate and fierce, and tasted like rain and revelation. Sophie kissed him back with 3 years of grief and rage, and impossible, unexpected feeling. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Dominic touched her face with trembling fingers. I don't want to lose you, he said. Not like I lost her. Then we fight. A sound made them freeze. Footsteps directly overhead. They had seconds before they were found. Sophie grabbed Dominic's hand and pulled him deeper into the basement, toward a drainage tunnel barely visible in the darkness. They crawled through water and filth, emerging on the far side of the construction site. They ran for Dominic's car, mud-soaked and gasping. Only when they were miles away did Sophie realize her hand was bleeding. Dominic noticed at the same time. "You're hurt." "It's nothing." "It's not nothing." He pulled over, his hands gentle as he wrapped her wound with his shirt. "Sophie, I need to get you somewhere safe. Marcus won't stop until we're both dead." Then we go to the journalist. We tell them everything. They'll never believe us without proof. Sophie met his eyes. Then we get proof. We break into Marcus's office and find the paper trail, the payments to my father, the insurance payouts, everything. That's insane. So is letting him get away with murder. Dominic stared at her, and something shifted in his expression. "When did you become so brave?" "When I realized I had something worth fighting for." He kissed her again, softer this time. "Tomorrow night. We break in together." "Together," Sophie agreed. Neither of them saw the black SUV following them in the rain. Marcus smiled from the passenger seat, phone to his ear. "They're heading back to the estate." "Good. Let them think they're safe." He ended the call and looked at the man driving. "Tomorrow night, after they break into my office, we'll have all the evidence we need that they were trying to destroy me. And when they tragically die in the break-in, no one will question the grieving business partner who inherits everything." The driver nodded, and Marcus settled back in his seat, already planning his next move. They returned to the estate like soldiers retreating from battle. Mud-stained, bleeding, and bound by something neither of them dared name aloud. Margaret met them at the door, her face pale. "Thank God. I've been trying to reach you for hours." "What's wrong?" Dominic asked. "Your father called. He wants to meet with Sophie. Tonight, at the old Adams house." Sophie's blood went cold. "That's impossible. My father wouldn't risk contact. The arrangement specifically forbids it." He said it was urgent. "A matter of life and death." Margaret handed Sophie a note. He sounded terrified. Sophie read the scrawled message, her father's handwriting shaking across the paper. "Sophie, I'm sorry for everything. Please come alone. I have information about Marcus Chen you need to hear. This is the only way I can make things right." Dominic took the note, his jaw clenched. "It's a trap. Maybe. Or maybe he's trying to help. After everything he's done, after he sold you to pay his debts." Sophie's throat tightened. "He's still my father, and if he knows something about Marcus, we need that information. Then I'm coming with you. The note says alone. I don't care what the note says." Dominic gripped her shoulders. "Sophie, I just found you. I'm not losing you to Marcus's games." She touched his face, feeling the stubble rough against her palm. "You won't lose me. But if we both go and it is a trap, we're both dead. This way, if something happens, you can still expose Marcus." "No. Dominic, please. Trust me." He pulled her close, his heart hammering against her ear. "I trust you. I don't trust anyone else." They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the vast, empty foyer of a house built on grief. Finally, Dominic released her. "Take my phone. Keep the line open. If anything feels wrong, even for a second, I'm coming for you." "Okay. And Sophie?" His voice cracked. "Come back to me." "I will." The Adams house looked smaller than Sophie remembered. Rain had stripped paint from the shutters, and her grandmother's rose bush had withered to thorns. The front door was unlocked. Inside, darkness and the smell of mildew. Sophie's footsteps echoed on hardwood floors as she moved through rooms that had once held her entire world. "Dad?" she called. Nothing. She climbed the stairs to his study, her childhood memories flickering like old film. Here was where he'd taught her to play chess. Here was where she'd found him crying the night the building collapsed. The study door was open, Her father sat behind his desk, silhouetted against the window. He didn't turn when she entered. "Dad, I got your message. What information do you have about Marcus?" Silence. Sophie moved closer, her heart beginning to hammer. "Dad." When she rounded the desk, she saw why he wasn't answering. Her father's eyes stared at nothing. Blood pooled across the mahogany surface, the same desk where she'd seen her forged signature just days ago. Sophie's scream tore through the empty house. She stumbled backward, her hand over her mouth, trying not to be sick. The phone. She needed to call Dominic, call the police, call someone. "I'm sorry you had to see that." Marcus stepped from the shadows, a gun in his hand. Sophie's entire body went numb. "You killed him." "I had to. He was getting cold feet about our arrangement. Started talking about going to the authorities." Marcus gestured casually at the body. "Couldn't have that. Dominic knows everything. If you kill me too..." "Oh, Sophie." Sweet, naive Sophie. Marcus smiled. "Dominic doesn't know anything. Because the phone you're carrying, it's not transmitting. I had it switched when you stopped for gas on the way back from the construction site." Sophie's hand trembled as she pulled out the phone. Dead. No signal. No connection. "Now here's what's going to happen," Marcus continued, his voice pleasant. "You're going to write a suicide note confessing that you and your father conspired to kill Alina. That guilt drove you both to take your own lives. Very tragic. Dominic will be devastated, of course, but he'll have me to help him through it. He'll never believe it, won't he? You're the daughter of the man whose negligence killed his fiancée. He married you for revenge. Everyone knows that." Marcus pulled out a piece of paper and a pen. "Now write." "No." He pressed the gun against her temple. "Write, or I'll make Dominic watch you die before I kill him too. And I'll make it hurt." Sophie's hand shook as she took the pen. "Why are you doing this? You had everything. Dominic trusted you." "Had everything. I built that company with my bare hands while Dominic played at being an architect. But he got all the credit because of his family name. The Hartwell legacy." Marcus's voice turned bitter. "Well, now the Hartwell legacy dies with him, and I'll finally get what I deserve." Sophie stared at the blank paper. Every second she delayed was another second for Dominic to realize something was wrong. She started to write, her letters deliberately shaky and uneven. If she was going to die, she'd leave clues in her own suicide note. Behind Marcus, a shadow moved. Sophie kept writing, not daring to look up. The shadow resolved into Dominic, water dripping from his hair, murder in his eyes. He must have followed despite everything. Sophie's heart leapt and broke simultaneously. He'd come for her, and now they'd both die. She met his eyes for a fraction of a second, saw him raise a piece of broken wood from the ruined house, and she made her choice. "Marcus," she said loudly, "I need you to know something before I die." "What's that?" "Dominic didn't marry me for revenge." She stood slowly, drawing Marcus's attention away from the doorway. "He married me because he's a good man, better than you'll ever be. And when the truth comes out, and it will come out, everyone will know you for the murdering coward you really are." Marcus's face twisted with rage. "You stupid girl." Dominic swung. The wood connected with Marcus's skull with a sickening crack. The gun clattered across the floor. Marcus dropped unconscious. Sophie ran to Dominic, and he caught her, his arms like iron. "I couldn't sit in that car," he gasped. "I couldn't let you face this alone." "My father," Sophie sobbed. "He's dead. Marcus killed him." Dominic held her tighter. "I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." They stood there, two broken people in a house of ghosts, holding each other while rain hammered the windows. Then Dominic pulled back, his expression grim. "We need to call the police." "Wait." Sophie knelt beside Marcus's unconscious form and pulled out his phone. No password. Arrogant to the end. She opened his emails and found everything. Payments to her father, correspondence with the steel supplier, insurance documents, even a file labeled Alina Contingency Plan. He documented everything, she breathed. Every step of the murder. It's all here. Dominic's hands shook as he looked at the evidence. 3 years of questions finally answered. 3 years of grief weaponized by the man he'd called his best friend. I should kill him, he said quietly. I should make him suffer the way he made everyone else suffer. Sophie touched his face. You could, and you'd be justified. But you're not him, Dominic. You're not a murderer. He took everything from me. No. She held his gaze. He tried. But you're still here. We're still here. And now we have the truth. Sirens wailed in the distance. Margaret must have called the police when Dominic left. Dominic looked at Sophie, really looked at her, seeing, past the arrangement and the debt, to the woman who'd somehow become his reason to keep breathing. I love you, he said. I don't know when it happened or how, but Sophie, I love you. Tears streamed down her face. I love you too. They kissed as police lights painted the walls red and blue. Marcus groaned, beginning to wake, and Sophie realized, with crystalline clarity, that love wasn't the end of their story. It was just the beginning of the hardest part. Because Marcus wasn't waking up. He was reaching for something in his jacket. Dominic! Sophie screamed. The gunshot echoed through the empty house. Sophie felt the impact before the pain. Hot and sharp and stealing her breath. She looked down at the blood spreading across her white shirt and thought, stupidly, that it looked like a rose. Dominic caught her as she fell, his voice breaking on her name. The second gunshot came from somewhere else. A police officer in the doorway. Marcus fell back, clutching his shoulder. But Sophie was already slipping away, Dominic's face fading in and out like a photograph dissolving in water. Stay with me, he begged. Sophie, please, stay with me. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sorry I couldn't keep my promise. No, don't you dare. He pressed his hands against her wound, trying to stop the bleeding. Help! I need help! Sophie touched his face one last time, memorizing the storm in his eyes. Thank you, she said, for loving me, even when you didn't want to. Sophie. But she was already gone, slipping into darkness while Dominic screamed her name. And somewhere in that darkness she heard music playing. A piano. Playing the melody she'd taught him. Sophie woke to white walls. White sheets. White light streaming through hospital blinds. Pain bloomed in her chest with every breath, sharp and insistent. She was alive. You're awake. Dominic sat in the chair beside her bed, unshaven and hollow-eyed. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. How long? Her voice came out scratchy, unused. 4 days. You've been in and out of surgery. His hand found hers, gentle despite his obvious exhaustion. The bullet missed your heart by 2 inches. The doctors said if it had been any closer, he couldn't finish the sentence. Sophie squeezed his fingers. Marcus? In custody, facing multiple counts of murder, attempted murder, and corporate fraud. The evidence on his phone was enough to bury him for life. Dominic's expression darkened. He's claiming temporary insanity. That grief over Alina's death drove him to it. That's insane. His lawyers are good, but our truth is better. He lifted her hand to his lips. Sophie, I thought I'd lost you. When you stopped breathing in the ambulance, when they rushed you into surgery, I prayed to a God I stopped believing in 3 years ago. Tears tracked down Sophie's face. I heard you. In the darkness. I heard you playing piano. I haven't stopped. Every night I play that melody you taught me. It's the only thing that keeps me sane. A knock interrupted them. Margaret entered carrying a vase of wildflowers, the kind that grew by Sophie's grandmother's rosebush. These just arrived, Margaret said softly. No card. Sophie knew who they were from. Her mother. The woman who'd twisted her wedding ring nervously while her husband sold their daughter. The woman who was now a widow, grieving a man who'd made terrible choices. I want to see her, Sophie said. My mother. Is she here? Dominic and Margaret exchanged glances. She's been here every day, Margaret admitted. Sitting in the waiting room. She doesn't think you'll want to see her. Bring her in. Her mother looked 10 years older. Grief and guilt had carved new lines around her eyes. Sophie, her voice broke. I don't expect forgiveness. What we did, forcing you into this arrangement, it was unforgivable. And your father, the choices he made, he tried to make it right, Sophie interrupted. At the end, he tried to protect me. It doesn't excuse anything. No, it doesn't. Sophie met her mother's eyes. But you're still my mother, and I don't want to lose anyone else. Her mother sobbed, pressing her face into Sophie's hand. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, they cried together, mother and daughter, grieving the man who'd destroyed and tried to save them both. After her mother left, Dominic pulled the chair closer. There's something I need to tell you, he said. About us. About this marriage. Sophie's heart clenched. You want to end it. What? No. He looked horrified. Sophie, no. I want to ask if you'll marry me. For real this time. Not because of debt or arrangements or revenge, but because I love you. Because you've shown me how to live again instead of just surviving. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a ring. Not the cold diamond he'd given her when she arrived at the estate, but a simple gold band with a small sapphire. It was my grandmother's, he said. She told me to save it for someone who made me believe in magic. I thought that person was Alina. But Sophie, you've taught me that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who makes you want to be better than your grief. Sophie's vision blurred with tears. Yes. 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, and for the first time since the accident, Sophie felt like she could breathe fully. When you're healed, Dominic said, I want to take you somewhere. Away from this city and all its ghosts, we'll find a place where we can start over, build something new. What about Hartwell Industries? I'm selling my shares. Marcus tried to destroy it from the inside, and I don't want to spend the rest of my life fighting his damage. There are other things I want to build now. He touched her face. Like a life with you. A real one. Full of music and sunlight and all the things we've been too afraid to want. What will we do? I don't know. Maybe I'll go back to architecture. Design buildings that honor Alina's memory instead of drowning in it. And you, what do you want? Sophie thought of her paintings, hidden in her room at the estate. Of the sunrise she'd captured from her bedroom window. Of all the art she'd never made because survival had consumed everything. I want to paint, she said. I want to create beautiful things in a world that's tried so hard to be ugly. Then that's what you'll do. Dominic kissed her forehead. We'll find a little house with good light. You'll paint, I'll design, and we'll learn how to be happy. Really happy? Not the desperate happiness of people running from pain, but the quiet happiness of people who've walked through fire and chosen each other anyway. It sounds impossible. Good. Impossible is where we do our best work. 3 months later, Sophie stood in a gallery in Portland, surrounded by her paintings. Explosions of color and light, sunrises and storms, portraits of a man with winter eyes learning to smile. Dominic stood beside her, his hand warm in hers. They're going to sell out, he murmured. Every single one. I don't care about selling them. I care that they exist, that I made something beautiful from all that ugliness. You made something beautiful from me, he said. And I was pretty ugly when you found me. Sophie laughed, the sound filling the gallery like music. Across the room, Sophie saw her mother talking with Margaret, building a tentative friendship from the ashes of everything they'd lost. Marcus's trial had started last week. Sophie and Dominic would testify, would tell the truth about Alina's death and the building that had stolen so many lives. It would be painful. It would reopen wounds, but they would face it together. A reporter approached, young and eager. Miss Adams, your work is incredible. Can you tell us about your inspiration? Sophie looked at Dominic, at the man who'd bought her as revenge and loved her into freedom. "I paint about second chances," she said, "about finding beauty in broken things, about love that happens when you're not looking for it, when you think your heart's too damaged to open again. I paint about the possibility that even our worst moments can lead us to exactly where we need to be." The reporter scribbled notes. "And the man in your portraits? Is he someone special?" "He's my husband," Sophie said simply. "He's my home." After the gallery closed, they walked through Portland's streets, hand in hand. Rain was coming. Sophie could smell it in the air. But she wasn't afraid of storms anymore. "Do you ever regret it?" Dominic asked suddenly. "The way we started? The contract, the arrangement, all of it?" Sophie stopped walking, pulling him to face her under the glow of a street lamp. "I regret that people had to die for us to find each other. I regret my father's choices and Marcus's evil. But us? No, I don't regret us. Even though I brought you to my house to punish you? Even though... Because, Dominic, that's not what you did. You gave me a piano and let me play. You let me open curtains and bring light into darkness. You showed me your ghosts and let me show you mine. You didn't punish me. You set us both free." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. "I used to play Alina's favorite songs every morning," he said against her lips. "Now I play yours, and I don't feel guilty about it. She would have wanted me to be happy. She would have liked you. I wish I could have known her. You do know her. She's in every note I play, every building I design. But she's not a ghost anymore, Sophie. She's a memory I can smile at instead of drowning in." They walked back to their car, back to the little house they'd bought on the coast. It had good light for painting, and a music room with a grand piano. Some nights, Sophie woke to find Dominic playing in the darkness, working through his grief in the only language he knew. And she would sit beside him, sketching by candlelight, two artists healing each other one creation at a time. The past would always be part of them. The building that collapsed, the lives lost, the fathers who failed, and the friend who betrayed. These were the foundations they built on. But what they built was theirs. A love that wasn't perfect or simple or easy. A love that had survived bullets and contracts and ghosts. A love that had started as punishment and became salvation. On their first real anniversary, Dominic took Sophie back to the estate. The mansion that had felt like a tomb now stood empty, waiting for new owners. They walked through the halls one last time, saying goodbye to the place where their story began. In the music room, the grand piano sat silent. "Play something," Sophie said. Dominic sat at the bench and patted the space beside him. Together, they played their melody, the one she'd taught him that first week. 4 hands on ivory keys, creating something beautiful from the ruins of what had broken them. When the last note faded, Dominic pulled a piece of paper from his pocket. The contract. The one with her forged signature. He handed Sophie a lighter. They burned it together, watching the flames consume the document that had brought them together for all the wrong reasons. And then they walked out of the mansion, hand in hand, leaving the ghosts behind. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Sophie thought about painting it, capturing this moment when everything changed. "Ready?" Dominic asked. She looked at him. At the man who'd been her captor, her enemy, her salvation, and her love. "Ready." They drove away as the mansion faded behind them. 2 survivors building a life from the ashes of tragedy. Some love stories begin with a kiss. Theirs began with a contract signed in blood and grief. But it ended with something better. Hope and the understanding that sometimes the worst beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings. The end.